You mentioned earlier that, there's certain things to consider when regarding whether you should add a card payment system to your store or not. It may be a good fit, may not be a good fit. I'm just curious, do you have some things that you feel like owners should consider when they're considering adding a payment, card payment system to their store? Because they're typically not cheap, right? To add. So it is an investment that you're making in your store. So how do you know whether that's a good thing or not to do?
Sure. And I think, to be fair and if you have a store that's struggling, I am not going to hear and tell you that a card system is going to fix that. A good store is a good store. A bad store is likely a bad store. It doesn't mean that you can't do things to make improvements, but a card system isn't singularly going to change your world. Now, at least from a perspective, is it a good store or a bad store? I've certainly seen people whose worlds have changed because they put a payment system in and it's made their lives easier, particularly multi-store operators. They're like, I can't collect any more coins. I'm chasing like crazy. And they, this just gives them their life back. And I think, there's something to be said for that. But is it a fit for everybody? It's not a fit for everybody. I would say that before there were hybrid systems, the systems now that can allow you to take credit card right out the machine. We used to say that if you're in a real transient, like vacation type area where, your customers are a lot of vacationers and they're only there for a short time, you might struggle with trying to convince them they had to buy a card. They're only going to do laundry there for 2 weeks and they're going home, But since we're starting to take credit cards direct to the machine, that actually is almost better for them because they don't need to go look for quarters or they go to the change machine. They can they're using their credit card for anything, anyway, we go that route anyway. So I think it really comes down to looking at the demographic a bit. Again, because I'm biased, I think there's most places can do it. I think where it doesn't work is when the store owner just can't get their mind off of the fact that there's no quarters anymore. And usually that has to be a problem with their business model. And there's no gentle way to say this, but people love our business because it's a cash business. And there's a bit of eyes that people feel that a card system adds to their business that they may not be looking for. I argue that's not necessarily true. Nobody knows how you run your business. When I file my taxes, I don't give them a list of all the hardware that I use to keep track of my books. I just submit my taxes, like anyone else. And I think that's the same is true with this, but it's not a good fit for those operators. I think that just, can't see the value in that. And that's okay because, it'll either come around or that store will flip. And there'll be other opportunities there, but I think you have to think about vacation spots and things like that. Demographically, I've seen it work everywhere, but we've gotten to the point now where there's so many options available. If you can't find one that fits, it's just you're not ready. And being a salesman for a long time, you learn that you can't really sell anybody anything. They've got to want to buy it. You're just trying to get them to look at what you're doing and show them the value that you bring to the table. So if they're not ready, then that store's not ready to go card.
Yeah. I think that's really good input. Let me ask you specifically, because I get this question a lot. What about in lower income areas? I think there's some concern about, from people who are operating in lower income areas, like, lower income areas, and I think there's some concern about using a card system in those areas. What have you seen? Have you seen it work in those areas? How well does it work in those areas? Or is that an exception where maybe it doesn't work as well? I'm curious what you think.
I think it depends on the operator and what they're willing to do. And what I mean by that is, first of all, laundromats. There are no laundromats in Beverly Hills, unless you tell me. You're closer than I am, but there's probably not a lot of laundromats and laundromats are typically more successful in those demographics. That's just the business that we're in. And it's all about value. I talked before, it's really about value. And I would say that in those low income areas, I would argue that they're probably the same demographic that are always looking for a coupon because they're looking to get best value when they go to the grocery or when they have to buy something. They're looking for, how do I save some money, and that's where a card system can really benefit a demographic like that, because in a coin store, how do you unless you're just going to lower all your prices, how do you offer a value proposition in a form of maybe a coupon? You know what I mean? We have coupon programs in our products that allow you to attract that type of customer and give them more value. Say, hey, if you're willing to use a card, we'll save you money. And it's as easy as that. And who doesn't want to save money? And especially in those areas that you describe, they probably need to save money. And so as an owner operator, how are you fulfilling that need where they need to find a way to save value? And if it means that they got to put $10 on their card to get an extra dollar and save them 10%, I mean, that's a pretty good reward right there, getting 10% off on your laundry. And what you've done there is you've bought a little loyalty from that customer. And in return, you've given them a discount, and there's lots of examples of other programs that you can, you can turn on and off and give your customers that value. And you have to look at your area to see what makes sense. But even in those I've seen it in the worst neighborhoods. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We call them tough neighborhoods. It works. There's a safety concern there too. You know what I mean? Something that I noticed in one of the first stores that we put it, and this is going back 20 years ago, in a really kind of rough neighborhood, was as soon as people understood what it was, because there was a little bit of a learning curve 20 years ago, consumers weren't quite sure what this was. But when they realized what it was, we saw people leveraging as a budgeting tool. They walk into a store, I mean, not kidding, put $50 in the machine and then leave the store. And you're like, they didn't have any laundry with them? Nope. It was the first of the month. They had just gotten their money and they wanted to make sure that $50 was there for the whole month.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the way I budget, but some people need that simplistic idea that this card has got my $50 worth of laundry on it and it ain't going anywhere else and it's staying in my wallet until it's time to do laundry. So, that's just an example of, maybe some of the mentality that we deal with there.
Real quick. I mean, that made me think, that's an awesome opportunity to incentivize that even, right? And like, hey, for the first 2 or 3 days of the month, if you put $50 in, we're going to give you another $5 or $10 or, just kind of incentivizing that. And that not only will probably help them, if they're having trouble hanging on to money, that'll incentivize them to, it's almost like the forced savings, for put aside for the chore. But it also, it'll help them and it'll give you that money up front to be able to do more things for your customers and for your business with. So that could be a big win-win. So
absolutely.
I love the promotional possibilities and just ways to incentivize customers. And I think, incremental pricing is, it can be, that can be even a promotion in and of itself, where instead of raising a quarter, you're raising the 8 cents or whatever. But being able to, gift people money on their cards or incentivize them to put a certain amount on and give them, or however it works, or keeping track of how many washes are being used and giving, free washes, stuff like that. So
yeah.
I love that. And that stuff, some of that is possible if you're using coins, but man, I tried when I first bought my laundromat, I tried doing that where it was like, we had punch cards and my attendants were giving out blue quarters to I was like, oh, this is horrible. I'm not doing this anymore ever again. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah.